Hello, this is Reverend Don Lewis coming to you from beautiful Salem. And it was rather wet and stormy here in beautiful Salem today. We had a beautiful dramatic thunderstorm, complete with lots of flooding. And I think I'm finally dry, but beautiful day. And if you like thunderstorms, this is a good place for them. With the beautiful weather coming off the ocean, it can be very dramatic. Personally, I've always enjoyed a good thunderstorm. But tonight I wanted to continue our conversation about structure and expectation, and I wanted to kind of continue the theme of mixed expectations, conflicting expectations. And I wanted to talk about one of my particular pet peeves, and that is consensus decision-making. You may have heard of consensus decision-making. It has had a lot of fans over the years in the pagan community, most of whom have come to a rather bad end, and there's a reason for that in my opinion. And that is that, for the most part, consensus decision-making just plain doesn't work. If you are a small group, it can work. But if you're any sort of large group or community group, it can be a disaster waiting to happen. What is consensus decision-making? Consensus decision-making is the idea that no action can take place unless every member of the group agrees on that action. And as should not be too hard to see, that can be very hard to bring about. Now, am I saying that it's a bad idea to have a group consensus? Absolutely not. In fact, if you don't have a certain amount of group consensus, you don't have a group. But it's one thing to have a consensus of opinion, and another thing to try to involve every individual in every decision. There are a couple of reasons why this is bad. One of them is that certain people are always going to be more invested in groups than others. It sounds like a good idea to say you want everyone really involved and invested and committed, but it can be another thing in practice. The other aspect of it is that not everyone wants to be involved in every decision. It can be very detrimental to a group when simple things cannot take place without involving every person. I personally find that when I'm involved in that sort of group, I usually end up pulling my hair out and saying, "Why are you asking me this?" When it's something that really would work better if someone were just appointed to do it. Now, is it a good idea sometimes to have everyone involved in deciding who's going to do something? Well, sometimes that's good. And again, if you're a small group, particularly if you know each other well, or if you don't give the position that allows involvement in the consensus easily, then maybe it might work for you. But I've so often seen it tried in large groups involving disparate personalities from disparate backgrounds who do not have the same ideas in the first place, and it often degenerates into a free-for-all. Most often, in my experience, consensus decision-making, when people are actually trying to do it, really ends up in the loudest people bullying the others, and basically forcing their way. Rather than everyone actually coming to a legitimate agreement, it ends up with a large number of the people walking away, others feeling abused and taken advantage of, and usually ends up in general chaos. And many of the organizations that say they run by consensus, actually if you pay attention, you'll notice they don't really, those that work well. And in general, it's not something I advise. I think that you're much better off in terms of structure to have certain people who are responsible for doing certain things, especially small things. The day-to-day running of things, it's not necessarily a good idea to involve everyone in the decision of when to buy envelopes, or what color the literature should be, or other small things. People who want to be involved, well, that's different. This also manifests itself in the movements you often see in the pagan community to organize the community. And almost invariably they want to get everybody together at the same table to talk, never stopping to ask whether the people want to talk or not. I think it's a wonderful thing to try to build community organizations among those people who want to get along and work together. And by and large, in my experience, most of the groups in our pagan community do want to get along and work together, but there are invariably a minority who do not. Nothing in this world is going to make them work with others in a good way. And if you do force them to come to that table, they're going to sabotage it. And I have seen one group after another be sabotaged in exactly that way. So if you're someone who wants to organize your local pagan community, please remember this. If someone does not want to take part, do not force them to take part, because they will make you pay for it. It's much better, either community-wide or within your group, to involve those people who want to be involved. Going back to the example of picking envelopes and stationery color and other small things, there are many people who excel at that and they want to be involved in it. And those are the people who should be doing it. You're much more successful if, instead of trying to force people who don't want to be involved in a certain area to involve themselves in it, if you draw in the people who do want to do it. And they'll be happy doing it. Or in other words, in your structure, you should really try to have places for people that they want to be. And again, and I mentioned this last night, it's very important that form follow function, not function follow form. The biggest problem with consensus decision making is that it tends to be a matter of function following form, because people will try to use it even when it's obvious that it's not working, and they will just not notice. It's, as a general rule, much better if within whatever organization there are people who are responsible for certain jobs and accountable for certain jobs. And generally those organizations work a lot better. People often talk about witch wars, what causes them and what keeps them going. And one of the things that keeps them going is when there's no accountability for people's actions. One of the things you see in many of our communities is that people will fight these horrible wars with huge emotional costs and often pretty big financial costs in the community. And then they'll want to act like nothing happened afterwards. And in my opinion, this is very bad. The same people will often have horrible disagreements over minor points of liturgy and never make up from that. But the huge witch wars, they want to just move on from them as if nothing happened. So I think that we need to have a little more awareness of those who do want to get along and those who don't want to get along. And instead of trying to force those people who don't want to get along, we need to just ignore them. And if the people who want to get along will work together, they will be very successful. And the people who don't want to get along can do whatever they want to do. So that's my meditation for tonight, and we'll continue this conversation tomorrow, and until then, may you blessed be.